Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go. We are going to be talking about raising your vibration. So maybe, Lucy, we could start by telling people, what does that actually mean?
Yeah,
What are we actually talking about? Maybe we can start on that sort of whole energy piece.
yeah. Because you and I absolutely love the more woo-woo, the better for us. But some other people are like, what? So what does it mean to raise your vibration, and why do we need to aim to raise our vibration? Because so bringing it back down to basics, we live in an energetic universe. We are 99.99999% energy. I am, you are, my phone is, my laptop is, everything is energy and everything is vibrating on a different frequency. And basically like attracts like. So we will attract to us things that are vibrating on the same frequency as we are. And my very favorite analogy to explain this, and I've heard quite a few people use this sort of radio analogy, which is, and in fact, I was talking about this yesterday on one of my membership group calls. And if you think about it like this, so I'm sitting in my car and there is my radio, my car radio. And in that car is the possibility of many, many, many different radio stations. It's not as if there's only one radio station in my car, one radio station in your car. So when I turn that radio on, I have access to many different stations right here, right now. And what we need to do is we need to tune in to the radio station that we want, tune into what we want to hear, and that is what we will receive. That is what we will get back. And it's the same with us. We have to tune our frequency into the frequency of the things that we want. And there's like a vibration, I think it's the Hertz vibrational scale, which and it's pretty obvious which are the high vibe emotions and which are the low vibe emotions. But basically, to put it very simply, if we are spending most of our time in emotions like shame, anger, fear, anxiety, jealousy, all of those things, they are very low vibe emotions. And when we spend the majority of our time in those kinds of emotions, we are going to essentially attract more of that into our lives. But when we spend our time in emotions like joy and love and hope and excitement and enthusiasm, we are going to attract more things on that frequency. So it does sound very woo and it does sound very crazy, but basically everything is here already. It's just a question of which vibrational frequency we choose to tune our radio into. That is what we will receive.
Yes, beautifully explained.
Well,
And I
thank
think,
you.
and I think for those are people going, what do you mean like everything's energy? That's ridiculous. The table's sitting here and it's totally solid. But this is quantum physics. So if you break down under like a mega microscope, and you can actually, you can see that everything is actually just particles, just vibrating and moving, and nothing is actually solid. Is matter, is dense. But we get very caught up in this sort of 3D space, this 3D matter, and that's when we sort of, that's when we kind of feel those sort of denser emotions. And there really is there's this amazing sort of sliding scale of those sort of heavier emotions, like depression probably being the most dense, being right at the bottom of that, moving up to things like anger, to you kind of got boredom in the middle, and then you kind of rising up with love and peace and enthusiasm kind of right at the top. But we all can feel that, we all know that, don't we all know that when we're feeling that denser energy, we can feel it when we're feeling a bit depressed, when we're feeling low. You do feel heavy, you do feel like the energy is sucked out of you. And as you kind of you know, we've also all felt enthusiasm and excitement where, yeah, you just feel lighter and everything's buzzing around. So it kind of makes total sense when you in day-to-day
Yeah.
activities which we're doing, you know, how we're feeling. But but I think when you know about it and you actually fully understand it, it allows you to actually almost become aware of where you might be resting most of the time. And what we want to try and do is to get our resting state up that scale so that we can kind of, as you say, start tuning into the frequency of all those other things. You know, if we're constantly stuck in a place of focusing on what we don't have and all the lack, you know, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we don't have any of this, you know, we're kind of in this sort of slightly scared, worried, anxious state. And that is where we're going to be stuck, and we're just going to be, it's almost like you're on this kind of hamster wheel and not being able to get out of it. So we've got to find ways to break those sort of cycles and tune in to a higher frequency. And it's a constant, isn't it? It's a never ending thing.
Yeah, it is. And I think one thing that's really important to point out is that nobody expects us to be, you know, happy clappy hippy skippy 24/7, because that's just not how it works. And it's important that we feel all of those lower vibe emotions as well. But actually, I think what you and I are trying to say is that you can get to a point where your sort of default setting is a higher vibe than it is a lower vibe. And that doesn't mean that you can't experience those lower vibe emotions, but it just means that you want to get to a place where your kind of resting state is, you know, just up in the sort of higher emotions as opposed to the lower ones. And you know, going back to the whole energy thing, I mean, anyone who's going, oh, what a load of bollocks, well, it's not a load of bollocks, because we are energy. That is science. And I think people can be very dismissive about this whole concept if they haven't sort of studied it and learned about it and done the research. But the fact of the matter is that we are all 99.9% energy. And so, and like you were saying just now, it makes complete sense. You know, you can feel someone's energy. You can feel when you walk into a room, whether before you've heard what anyone is saying, before you've heard anything about what's going on in that room, you can walk into a room and you can feel whether there is a good energy or a bad energy. And one thing that I've said before on my podcast is that what people remember, actually, when you really think about it, what people remember when they've had an interaction with you isn't what you said, isn't what you did, it's how you made them feel. And that is so much about our energy. And you know, energy can be measured like our magnetic field. And when we're in kind of really high vibe states like peace and love and joy, you know, our magnetic, what's the word? Like our magnetic field can literally go out. I think it's by about 6 feet out from where we are, which just shows how powerful those really high vibe emotions are. So it is so incredibly important to every single day just keep asking yourself, well, where am I on that vibrational scale? Where are my emotions? And the best way to always work out where you are is just to ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling? And what I do multiple times a day, I mean, you and I have talked about this before, I have reminders on my phone that come up several times a day to remind me to check in with how I'm feeling and where I am in terms of my thoughts and my emotions and my vibration. And you know, the thing is that there are lots of little tips and tricks that you and I can get into about what we can do to actually raise our vibration. And there are so many things that you can do on a daily basis to just shift that energy, not least literally like putting on a really amazing song that makes you feel incredible, a really uplifting song. And also another really, really simple thing to do is literally just to shake your body out. So you literally shake the bad energy out. If you move, like if you go for a walk, or if you do exercise, or if you meditate, or if you do breath work, all of these things can raise your vibration. So it's just knowing how to, you know, practically tap into higher vibrations.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we can easily get very stuck in, you know, it's quite addictive getting in once you're in, well, wherever you are, in whatever vibration you're in, but particularly those sort of lower vibrations. It sounds weird because you kind of think, well, I want to feel good, but actually you can get very addicted, because what you're doing is you're kind of, it's almost, you're just sort of you're kind of feeling that emotion, but then you're drawing more of it to you and you're then feeding it. So for example, if you're really depressed, a slightly higher emotion on that scale is anger, but then so then you might be actually that's kind of going to make you feel a bit, it's weird, there is this kind of weird, that there is that scale, isn't there, which is really interesting, which I really would invite anyone to have a look at, the sort of vibrational scale. But if you were really depressed, you might then get addicted to listening to really scary news, for example, because you're actually, it's kind of a slightly better vibrational state to be tapping into. So you then watch it, but it's actually not doing you any good. We just got to try and keep moving up that scale and not get so stuck and addicted. But yes, you're so right, there are so many things we can do. And yes, feeling, as we always say, you've got to feel emotions to go through them. You don't want to suppress them or numb them and be distracted, because that's what we tend to do. We tend to not want to feel our emotions, and that's when we sort of numb out through all those various things like distraction by your phone, alcohol, drugs, whatever, blah blah blah. So you've got to feel the emotions, move through them, but what we want to then do is then reach for slightly better emotions, and we can kind of gradually move way up the scale. And yes, all those practices which you mentioned are all so useful, and of which I use. For me, music is a massive one. Listening to good podcasts, just having a chat with somebody who uplifts you and not surrounding you with people who drain you. I've got 3 teenagers, 2 of them still at home at the moment, and quite often they can sap my energy within a moment, because they're just in those teenager kind of modes, and I have to be really conscious nowadays that I've got to just not go down. It's very easy because I'm if you're a sensitive person, which I am, I can very easily pick up on their energy. But I've noticed that if I actually consciously keep my energy, I kind of put a little bit of a boundary around myself, and actually if I keep my energy high, then actually it does end up reflecting on them and kind of helps them to come. So we are such, particularly if you are a sensitive person, we really do pick up other people's energy quite a lot. So one big thing you can do is really be very conscious of that, of the people you are surrounding yourself with, because if they are all very low at vibe, you will feel it and you will pick it up and you'll get stuck in there as well.
Completely. And that's just reminded me, I think we might have mentioned this at some point on Monday Motivation before, but there's the idea of being either a thermostat or a thermometer. So actually we want to aim to be the thermostat in a room, because when you walk into a room of people, basically we all kind of tune into each other's vibrations. So you can be in a really, really good mood and walk into the middle of a conversation where everyone is, it feels really heavy, and you can tune to that vibration, like you're saying about, with your teenagers. But actually what we can sort of aim to do is be actually the thermostat rather than the thermometer, so that we set the tone of the temperature and set the energy in a room. Because you'll find that if you walk into a room where one person is really, really high vibe, everybody will tune up to that. So it's much more sort of powerful when somebody is really, really excited and really happy and, on a real high. People tend to tune up to that rather than down to whoever is kind of vibing first in the room, That's quite a good thing to bear in mind, to try and be the person who is setting the thermostat in the room, rather than allowing ourselves just to be sort of tossed around and our energy depending on other people's energy, because that's not what we want. We want to be in control of our own energy. But should we just talk about a few things? I mean, we've mentioned music, and there, music is such a simple fix. Like, if you are feeling like shit, and let's say it's Monday morning, like it is today. It's Monday morning. you've got to go to work, you're depressed because it's Monday morning and you're just feeling a bit crappy. If you literally just play 2 or 3 songs that make you feel really good and that make you feel really happy, if you just do that, that is going to affect your vibration. That is going to put you in a better space in your head, and you're going to be vibrating on a higher frequency. And remember, it is so important, because the more that we sit in low vibe emotions, the more of the more people, circumstances, situations, things are going to come into our life. And actually, I think this is such a key thing to understand. And when you really get this, it changes your life. Because, you know, I used to absolutely have a tendency towards like real sort of cynicism and pessimism, and that was always my kind of default. I am not, I think, by nature an optimist. I can be quite pessimistic, actually, but it's something that I've worked on, and it's something that I feel like I've changed. And you know, we all have that choice. And 100%, I can tell from my own experience in my own life that in the times that I've been feeling really down and depressed and just generally shit, more of that stuff comes into your life. The more you sit in those emotions, the more you attract them. That is just the way it works. And it makes complete sense, because when you think about the fact that we are all, you know, largely energy, but essentially we are almost 100% energy. And when you think about it in those terms, it makes complete sense that we're going to attract things on the same vibrational frequency as us. And we do have a choice. So something like just listening to a couple of songs in the morning is such a brilliant way of shifting your energy. Another thing that I do every single day, and it works like a charm every single day, and it's so simple, is just to go for a walk. We've done a whole Monday motivation on getting out in nature. But nature, you know, there is research, there is scientific proof, scientific evidence that getting out in nature every day just for about 15-20 minutes can massively improve your mental health, your physical health, and it can raise your vibration. So going for a walk in nature is a huge one to raise your vibe. Polly, what other things do you do sort of day to
So
day?
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
first thing I do in the morning is I wake up and in my mind, I say to myself, oh, today's going to be a great day. So I literally just start like that. I smile as well first thing in the morning, which is, again, there's lots of research on that actually if you actually start with a smile, you're sending a message to your body that, oh my gosh, things good. Apparently even if you don't feel like smiling, so this is a bit of faking it until you making it, it still is sending chemicals to your brain that actually things are, you're okay. So having a smile, and then yeah, I mean, for me, moving your body is a great way to shift energy and to get anything stagnant out of your body. Obviously, I'm going to say breath work is massive in this, because it's the most powerful way, I really do believe, of shifting energy. If you've got negative, dense, stagnant energy in your body, which we all do, and a lot of us have it from many years past, even from childhood, breath work is a way of finding that energy, getting into the depths of your body. It's a real bottom-up approach, and it shifts that energy and moves it, and then you can have some sort of release. And that is why often after breathwork you might want to cry, you might feel really angry for a bit, because your body's processing that energy and releasing it and getting it out, and it's bringing in new, fresh, vibrant aliveness, new energy. And it's a great way for really raising vibration. And after a breathwork session, you can feel it all over your body. You can literally feel your body vibrating at a higher frequency. And it really is, I think, one of the most accessible ways, quick ways of actually doing all of this work, massively. Another way is to really ask yourself, and I think to become incredibly aware of those things you do during the day, the activities you do in the day, those things which drain you, which really just sort of, you just kind of go, oh God, I really don't want to do that. Really becoming aware of those. And okay, we're always going to have some of those activities probably on a day-to-day basis, but it's actually like, how can I perhaps limit those or outsource those as much as possible? Or if I do have them, can I try and change my thinking about them? And like, okay, I get to do this now, but then I've done it. It's just trying not to let it drain you, but also really becoming super aware of those activities or those actions in the day which really you look forward to and make you feel alive. And can you do more of those? Can you find more of those activities? And that we all have those things, but again, it comes back to just being aware of what they are, and just really focus on doing more of them. Yeah, I'm just trying to think in my day. I always think back with this when the last business I had, which was a tuition business, which I loved for a period of time, but it got to a point where there was an awful lot of admin to it, like a lot of printing, stapling, sorting, kind of like children's work, marking, and I could literally just do it standing on my head. I didn't really need to use my brain. It wasn't stretching me in any way. And every time I had to do that work, I just felt this denseness kind of like wash over me. And it used to, I would get a headache. I would feel really heavy. I was just like, I could just feel that energy. And afterwards, like, I've got to change this. I can't do this work anymore, because it really was just bringing me down. And honestly, since I've changed my career and done something else, I very rarely get that feeling. So I think it's just becoming aware of how often are you feeling like that.
Completely. And I think it's worth pointing out that actually, I think as human beings living in this sort of culture and the society that we live in, it's not always obvious to us to do something that makes us feel good. Like, we can be feeling really rubbish, we can be feeling really heavy, and we can be feeling really kind of low vibe, but it doesn't necessarily occur to us to sort of intentionally do something that's going to make us feel better. So we're more like to sort of just kind of flop from, like, oh, I'm just going to sit on the sofa and like watch TV and blah, blah, blah. And, because if you're feeling down or you're feeling low, then quite often you can't really be bothered to do something that's going to make you feel better. But it's just that it's being intentional about doing something at least a couple of times a day that actually makes you feel good, following what feels good. And you and I we're morning people, and I will say that starting your day doing something that makes you feel good is going to have a knock-on effect for the rest of the day. And that goes for even maybe don't listen to the news headlines first thing in the morning. We're all going to know what's going on in the news. I mean, I've said before that I don't actually really engage with the news, but of course I know what's going on. Of course I know what is happening in Israel right now. It's absolutely horrendous. It's just so terrible, but we can choose to not tune into that so much so that it affects the way that we feel in ourselves and in our lives. And I would say in the morning, rather than going straight, I think so many of us automatically, we turn the radio on, we listen to the news, or I think a lot of people sort of put daytime TV, morning TV programs on, which are obviously all about the news. But it might be a better idea to start the day by listening to, say, an uplifting podcast, because don't underestimate the power of just listening to something on your way to work that is making you feel a bit more optimistic and a bit more inspired and a bit more just a bit more positive about life. It makes a huge difference. So doing something to raise your vibe can also be just listening to something that is uplifting. It doesn't have to be anything major. So again, listen to some music that makes you feel good. Listen to a podcast that makes you feel good. I mean, I've talked about this before. I've done a blooming mini-sode on it, but I have, I have a rebounder, a mini exercise trampoline. Oh my God, if there is a better way of raising your vibration than bouncing on a freaking mini trampoline, I would love to know what it is. If anyone out there wants, is kind of wanting to get an exercise routine going, but is you know, like, oh, can't be bothered to go to the gym, can't be bothered to go for a run. I swear to God, rebounding is just game changing, because it's so easy, it's fun, it doesn't feel like really hard exercise, but it is also a really good cardiovascular workout, and it's really good for it, you know, it's good for toning, it's good for, but you know, building up your bone density, it's good for draining your lymphatic system. There are so many benefits, and my God, does it raise your vibe. And I do it basically every day. So anyone who wants a quick way of raising your vibration through exercise, get a rebounder. But Polly, just going back to what you were saying about breath work, you know, absolutely, I couldn't agree more about the fact that breath work is a really fast and effective way to raise your vibration. And you, more than anything else, actually, more than exercise, more than music, more than anything, if you do a breathwork session for 15 or 20 minutes, you can literally feel the tingles all over your body, can't you, afterwards? I mean, I've done
I would
many
say less than that. If you do I did 5 minutes before doing this, and I felt it. So I mean, 5 minutes honestly is sometimes all you need. But yeah, obviously the longer you do, you know, it's going to be a deeper experience. But yeah, I mean, even 5 minutes helps you. Yeah, just shifts things around your body.
Somebody who's never done it before and wants to sort of raise their vibration, what breath pattern would you suggest that they do for 5 minutes to shift their energy?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, I just did before this. I did a blow breath, which is literally. So you're just breathing out of your mouth, and you're contracting your belly. So I did that for 5 minutes. And yeah, I totally feel it. The triactive breath is a really good one, because that's quite activating. So that again is through the mouth, and it's 2 breaths in, 2 breaths in, sort of from through your belly up into your chest, out through your mouth, and do that again, you know, for 5 minutes, and you will feel it. You will feel that energy moving around your body.
Totally. And I think sort of before we wrap up, I think the key thing with this is to really start prioritizing what vibrational frequency you're on. Like, realize that it is affecting your life, it is affecting the way that you feel, it's affecting the way that your life actually looks. So I think it's worth starting to prioritize where you are on that Hertz vibrational scale, and to every day try and do a couple of things just for 5-10 minutes, just to shift that energy if you're feeling low energy and low vibe.
And that how you show up in the energy that you show up is transmitted into everything that you do. So I know that if I put out, for example, an Instagram post, which I've done because I was like, oh God, shit, I need to put something out. I've not really put my heart and soul into it. I kind of, you know, it pretty much gets, you know, it's no reaction, whatsoever. But if I actually put something out which has come from a really good vibrational place, then it tends to do so much better, because people feel the energy through what you are doing. And I've really noticed that. That's why before, you know, any of my group calls, which I do with my group, or with, you know, before I record a podcast or anything like that, I'm very intentional of like, even if I might just put on a song and have a jump around, or you're like just now, you know, I did 5 minutes of breath before this, or, you know, it translates into everything that you do. And so if I was turning up somewhere and I felt really sluggish, really low, you would feel it. You would totally feel it. So yeah, that's just another thing, really.
No, completely. I couldn't agree more. And you know, I talk about this in my podcast, obviously, is about being single and not having kids, and I talk about this in relation to, for any women out there who feel, you know, who have got those horrible heavy feelings of sort of shame or failure and all of those things that have been, you know, essentially because of society and the narrative and all that. Anyway, going off on a tangent, but I've said to people before, single women, like, no one gives a shit whether you're single or whether you're in a relationship. No one gives a shit. The only thing people really give a shit about is how you make them feel. And that is all about your energy, because people feel it. So when you walk into a room and you have a conversation with someone, even if someone says, oh, so are you in a relationship? And you're not, blah, blah, blah. No one really cares. They might, on the surface for 5 minutes, it's like anything really. on the surface we might be interested, or we might care about, you know, what somebody does or where somebody lives and all of this kind of 3D stuff. But ultimately, the most important thing and the main thing that people care about, even if they actually, it's subconscious to them and they don't realize they care about it, it's somebody's energy and the way that somebody makes you feel. That is what you take away with them, with you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Lucy, for all your wonderful wisdom as ever.
Right back at
and yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up, really.
Cool. All right. Right, love. Well,
Yeah.
I will. Are we doing breath work this morning?
If you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right.
I'll see you in a bit.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you. Bye. Bye-bye.